Okay, I think we're either all here or on our way to being here. So let's get going. Thank you for making the time this afternoon. My name is Risa Shimoda. I'm the Executive Director of the River Management Society, and really excited to be here today to talk about water trails programs and literally the pun of the state of the state water trails programs, how they work across our country. And we have three people who are panelists who know a whole lot about their work and the water trails in three specific different states and have a great program. And we think this could be like the time for water trails leaders to kind of gather or figure out a way that serves everyone and that we can learn from each other. So again, thanks for being here today.
And hi, everyone. I'm Angie Furman. I'm the River Training Center Coordinator for River Management Society. And just want to join in Risa and welcoming you and thanking you for joining. Just for those who might not be familiar, River Management Roundtables are something that we do every month, usually on the second Tuesday. And we host these virtual conversations to really help people network, connect, learn from their peers, and really to create an open forum where everyone can support each other in their work towards protecting and managing our rivers. And so again, welcome and stay tuned for our 2024 River Management Roundtables that we'll be announcing soon. Just a few program notes here. We are recording today's session and we will be posting this on the RMS YouTube channel afterwards. So you can find it there. Couple other notes. We just encourage you to be present and please stay muted when you're not speaking. That's just going to help reduce any feedback. We've got a nice sized group today, which is awesome. Really excited about. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to utilize the chat there, as well as we might have some times where we're asking questions and prompts. And so you're also welcome to raise your hand and then we can have you unmute and join in the conversation verbally. And then really just making sure that we're listening to each other, being respectful, making space for everyone's voices to be heard. So again, thank you. And now I'm going to pass it over to Tali to introduce herself and get us started.
It'd be helpful if I unmuted myself. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited and a little bit racked with nerves as the number of people that have signed up for today. But I feel like this topic is one that has generated apparently a lot of interest. So my name is Tali MacArthur. I work with the Pennsylvania Environmental Council. And one of the hats that I wear with PEC is the coordinator of the Pennsylvania Water Trail Program. So I am going to, I think, share my screen, and then I will also allow our other panelists today to, let's see here. And I'm going to do one last thing so that I can be sure that I see all of you and I can see the body language that's like, stop talking. So kind of the state of water trail programs was how we titled this today. That little kind of play on words. Let me make sure I can advance my slides. So I'm just going to give super quick, let the other two panelists introduce themselves. So John, if you want to go ahead.
Unmute myself. My name is John Wink. I'm the Water Trails Coordinator for the Iowa Department of Natural Resources.
And I'm Andrea White. I'm the Community Programs Coordinator for the Georgia River Network and the coordinator of the Georgia Water Trails Program.
Thank you. So I didn't really create like an agenda slide, but so we're going to try to go back and forth a little bit between giving all of you joining us today an opportunity to engage a little bit and then having some time to hear us talk and then also do some Q&A. If we can fit all of that into an hour, we'll see. So when you guys registered, there were a couple of questions in the registration, and we really appreciate those of you that chimed in to answer those questions. It really helped Andrea and John and myself kind of target our conversation today and our presentation. But I also wanted to give people the opportunity, hopefully Risa has dropped the Jamboard link into the chat, but I wanted to give people an opportunity to, oops, let me go the right way here. Hopefully this is working, to type in a little bit of what they hoped they would get out of today. So if you remember how to use a Jamboard, there's a little post-it note here, a sticky note, where you can quickly type an answer to this question. So what would make your participation today for this next hour really worth your time? What would you get out of this that, you know, what are you hoping to get out of this? If you want to type something in the notes or type something in the Jamboard. And while you're doing this, I'll just read a couple of the things that sort of came out to me and the responses that we got. So it's really exciting to see that so many of you are basically just looking to get a better understanding of how some state programs are working across the country. Is this working? Because I'm not seeing I wonder if it's working. Are people seeing notes on there? Yeah, great, awesome. Yeah, so how water trails are working. There are people who are looking for examples of water trail plans and strategic plans. A lot of people trying to understand the role of nonprofits in sort of statewide water trail programming and how partnerships between nonprofit and state and federal agencies are working. I'm just kind of sharing some of the other things that I've seen for those of you that might not want to type it again. People are definitely looking for like that one idea that they can take home and implement sort of right away. So maybe one of us will give you an idea, or at least convey that we're all sort of in the same boat and we're looking at the same kind of challenges. So understanding which states currently have programs and how are they run, how are they administered, what are the different roles of the partners. Definitely funding has come up over and over again, so I'm seeing that here. How water trails are expanding, how they're branded, how they're networked, seeing a lot about that, and then also sort of how they're promoted. So this is going to be really helpful, having this here, and then also having the responses that you gave during the registration, because we're hoping to build on this conversation today. So yeah, thanks. I know these are all great. Climate resilience, green infrastructure. There was a lot on accessibility. So what do we mean by universal access and ADA accessibility? So that's great. Yeah, and inventorying and maps, all really great information. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. I'm going to try to go back to the PowerPoint, and this will be saved. So I really appreciate your inputs here. One of them ended up on my slide, but that's okay. All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about the Pennsylvania Water Trail Program, and then we're going to let John and Andrea talk about theirs as well. So just to give a little bit background on Pennsylvania Water Trail Program, it is a collaborative effort of 4 administrative partners. Well, when it launched, it was 4 partners. It was the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, our State Fish and Boat Commission, and our State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources. And among the signers on the MOU were also the National Park Service. I will say that that partner has kind of made a little bit less of an appearance over time, but the other 3 are still really engaged. We have 29 individual water trails designated, and they each have an entity that is considered the manager. I will admit right now that over time, we have a few what we call orphaned trails, and that's definitely one of our challenges. So what we mean by that is that there's a trail that had a water trail manager for a while, but for whatever reason, that entity or organization, it sort of fell out of favor, and no one else has come along to take on that role. And as I talk a little bit more about Pennsylvania's program, it might be clear why nobody's sort of jumping at the bit to grab that role. But really, we strive to improve access for sustainable, inclusive, non-motorized recreation. So that's really the focus of the Water Trail Program. There are other programs that focused on motorized, and we focused on non-motorized. So just a quick couple things about sort of the details and the struggles or challenges or the things that kind of keep me up at night. So we have over 23,000 miles of trails that are officially designated. As I said, they're managed by discrete organizations, which we have occasional meetups, either regionally or statewide, to kind of network and talk about issues. Our funding is primarily from the state, so we get funding from our DCNR, but that funding is required to be matched at a 1-to-1 match. So we have to come up with 50% of the match, 50% of the program cost. We do have administer what we call a mini grant program. You might be familiar with this, but part of that state funding, we then sub grant out to projects that are proposed along designated water trails. So that's really one of our main benefits to being designated is having the opportunity for that mini grant. I will say that when I say mini, I mean it. They're only about $5,000 grants. So we have seen interest in that sort of kind of wax and wane depending on what's going on with other funding availability across the state. We do maintain a website with resources and news and the map that I showed you. But you know, we definitely do have some struggles, and those include sort of a lack of a cohesive brand. I'm not sure there's really awareness among users or paddlers whether or not they're on a designated water trail, and what that might mean or what expectations they can have. I'm always asking myself whether those 29 individual managers feel like they're a networked community, kind of advancing shared goals. And really, does that matter? That's definitely a question that's come up a couple times. Or is it okay that they're just doing their own, you know, work, but under sort of this umbrella of a program? Like you all say, funding. So securing that match is always a struggle and a challenge that we try to meet each year. And you know, I'm always asking myself, like, are there enough benefits for the managers? I talked about how we have these orphan trails. And when I call an organization and I say, hey, in your area, there's this water trail that needs a manager, they're like, well, what do I get? And to just tell them that they get a $5,000, you know, grant, or they're eligible to apply doesn't always entice them. So definitely trying to look for additional benefits for managers. And then, you know, always wondering if the resources and the value that a statewide program brings these individual managers, you know, is that really worth their time and effort? And so that's always a question I'm asking myself. We do have a process for trail designations. There's a checklist, and that there's more information about that on our website, but I can address that a little bit more. But that's kind of how the background of the PA program. Managers, they're responsible for creating maps and websites about their individual trails. And definitely for keeping access points accessible and working with other partners and other landowners to make sure that those access points are accessible. So those are kind of the things that the managers are responsible for. And as I said, we do have a process for trail designation that needs to be followed. And there's a committee that reviews and accepts applications. So that's just kind of some of the background, but I'll let my colleagues talk and let Andrea go.
Hi, everybody. I work for Georgia River Network. It's a nonprofit in Georgia that's been around for 25 years. We just had our anniversary this year. And it's a statewide nonprofit advocacy organization. We also, in addition to doing water trails, we do premier paddle trips for the public, host skills and safety classes, and training programs to mentor future instructors for paddle sports. So we're doing a lot of things other than just water trails. We also serve as the fiscal agent administrative background for the Georgia Water Coalition. So all of these things in our mission are inherently connected. We are not necessarily the landowner or the champion of the individual trails, but we are the backbone that is empowering and promoting best practices across all of these things. We can go to next slide. Our role here has really in this space has evolved. We are a publishing partner with UGA Press of the Georgia River Guides, and historically, Georgia River Network has supported the seed funding for a number of the river keepers that have evolved as the champions and the managers for these individual water trails. So we have kind of inherently fostered a network approach. But the water trail program as a whole has been sort of a mission-driven passion project for the board of directors. We have not had a lot of external funding to keep it going. So it's been something that our board of directors has really made happen, empowered. We have evolved over the last couple of years. We historically and over time had a role that was more a process of declaring established water trails. And we have moved into a new era. And our new era is more promoting the use of water trails and informing folks about how to get the information they need to safely use the water trails. And looking at it as more of a promotion and best practices kind of a role. We work with the river keepers and the water trail managers to promote all of the water trail best practices. But it's less about us being the water trail police for who is a water trail and who isn't, and more about trying to get the information into the hands of the actual target audience to use the water trails. Next slide. Can we go to the next slide? Oh yeah. Okay. So up to you, John.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Set my timer here so I don't go over. That's important. My name is John Wink. I'm the Water Trails Coordinator for the state of Iowa, and I work in the Department of Natural Resources. My primary job is water trails administration, but I also have a couple of other jobs that I do as well. I've been in my position for 14 and a half years now, 13 years of those as a full-time employee and 18 months as a full-time temporary position. It was a contracted position. Our program started in 2005 with one person being hired full-time with a $50,000 annual budget. And small grants were given to primarily county conservation boards. We have 99 counties in the state, and it was a competitive grant program. Average grant size was $7,000. Now, we had no standardization, there were no maintenance requirements, and there were no plans. By 2009, we had quite a hodgepodge of projects that all looked quite different from each other. Some were good, some were not so good. And in time, the signs went missing or they were vandalized. Other issues arose, such as law enforcement issues, people management, safety concerns, like with dams and hazards like strainers and whatnot, and also landowner complaints. And then we also have, a variety of different buy-ins from our land managers. Some people were excited about it, some people weren't. And then the local project sponsors eventually wanted DNR to solve all these problems that were happening. And what ended up happening, probably the best thing to come out of that, was a state mandated statewide plan. So the state gave the DNR funding to come up with a statewide plan. So for about 2 years, we went through a planning process, identified those issues, and tried to find solutions to some of those issues we were experiencing. By 2010, I was then hired. We came, a statewide plan was established. I was hired to implement that statewide plan. I would like to, of course, recognize we did rely on nonprofit organizations like Iowa Whitewater Coalition, who got us some dam funding. So we then added another program, dam mitigation. And then currently the Iowa Rivers Revival is a nonprofit that advocates on our behalf at the State House. Our annual funding, as a result of some of those nonprofits advocating for ourselves and local, project managers and sponsors, our funding has been as high as $2 million per year and as low as 500,000. And there has been a year where we didn't get anything. So our funding has not been consistent. So today we have an annual water trail selection process. We have a scoring committee, and project sponsors will apply for a section of river or lake. And we will score those applications and we choose one per year. We require and we do fund an individualized plan for that project that we select. That takes about 18 months to plan. The plan includes an assessment or a study of the existing condition. When you have to start somewhere, you have to find out where you're at. You know, how good are the accesses? How poor are the accesses? What are the issues? What are the problems? And then we go through a visioning and goal setting phase. And then we identify specific projects and prioritize those projects on what makes sense at the local level. Then we develop a brochure with a nice map on it. We install the signage, and we develop a management and maintenance agreement. And then finally, we designate the water trail. And really, designation is just the starting point, because now you've got your plan, you've got your roadmap. Annual meetings are required with the DNR, water trail sponsors, and land managers each year to gauge whether we're on track with that plan, meeting our goals. And I just see that I've gone past my time. So if any changes need to be made, and discuss any concerns or problems that need to be solved. And basically, our challenge is inconsistent funding. We've lost an employee since we've been here, but our number of projects have increased, which means our workload has increased. My workload has increased. And then some projects find it difficult to keep up with our ever-changing program. We always strive to improve what we're doing, and some projects have a hard time keeping up with that. And then the last issue is this agency, which also, has a goal for recreation and improving recreation, also is the regulatory component in a very pro-agricultural state. So that brings up issues with landowners and whatnot. So thank you very much. Sorry I went over the time, Tal.
No, that's fine. I learned something new. So that was great. Yeah, so I just realized that as much as we tried to prep for this, I did want to share for just a moment that I had asked all of you sort of, what did you hope to get out of this hour that you're spending here? And I didn't get a chance to kind of share what I had hoped. I kind of pitched this idea to Risa, and she knows that and I'll talk about this in a moment, but Pennsylvania Water Trail Program just sort of wrapped up a 5-year strategic action plan, and we've been languishing without one for about a year. So we're really prioritizing a new sort of strategic plan or strategic action plan for the next 5 years. And not really being a strategic thinker, I feel my strengths are more in sort of like project management, like tell me what to do and I'll get it done, but I don't necessarily want to be responsible for deciding what to do. And so, one of the reasons I wanted to host this is because I really wanted to learn, where are other statewide water trail programs or regional water trail programs, similar to a lot of you when you signed up, where are they and how are they run, but who's kind of thinking strategically about these plans, and where do we see these water trail networks moving in the next 5 years? What are some issues that might be universal to all of ours? And then of course, which ones are state by state. So one of my one of my reasons for wanting to start this was to kind of understand, strategic thinking. And then, also wanted to talk a little bit about, or hear back from John and Andrea, and maybe even some of you, if we have some chances for some feedback, but what does it really mean to be a network of trails? So what does that mean for the individual managers? What does that mean for the trails themselves? And what does it mean for the users if they are trying to select a destination for a paddling trip? Are there certain expectations that they can come with if they're going to be paddling on a designated trail? And does that mean something or not? So, and the third thing I came at this was, and we'll talk about this again a little bit at the end, but I really we only have an hour, and there's obviously so much interest here. So where might we go from here? So that's just a little bit of why I pitched this idea, and I think why kind of Risa and Angie and the RMS staff sort of supported it. And then I was able to bring Andrea and John on board and drag them along with me here. So again, to give all of you who I can't see you all the way my screen is set up, but another chance to kind of chime in. And again, this is something that maybe you answered when you registered, but going back to the Jamboard, what is kind of one of your strategic challenges that you or your organization is facing, either in your role or as you think about a state, regional, or basin-wide water trail program or initiative? So I'm going to pop back over to the Jamboard and give people an opportunity to kind of talk about this. I don't know, Angie or Risa, if we want to have people chime in or just kind of type. I'm happy to open up for a couple questions, sort of at our halfway point, if there are any. Or
Let's give people a half a minute to put some ideas down. They've heard from you three what yours are, and that might generate some other suggestions. And if someone is just dying to talk to us, then raise your hand and unmute yourself, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll just share again some of the challenges that were in the responses. So definitely, like I said, funding, thinking and talking and planning for universal and ADA accessibility. What does that mean? Who's doing it well? What does that even mean along a river system? Definitely things like branding and state recognition and sort of recognition of the water trail program. Maintenance. So a lot of people were talking about maintaining water trails, maintaining access points, funding for new and improved access points, especially in locations where maybe there wasn't a state or federal landowner. So those were some of the things that we heard. Being a better partner, advancing collaborative efforts along our trails. Those were definitely some of the challenges that kind of some of the themes that we saw in the responses. Benefits of designation, definitely something Pennsylvania is wondering about and hoping that we have. Raising awareness, branding, signage, and sort of the role between sort of paid staff and volunteer staff. So that's a lot of what we're seeing. I see trails managed by multiple organizations, but not necessarily having a lead entity. A lot of jurisdictions, definitely heard that in some conversations that I've had. This idea of kind of designating it or establishing it, but then following up on maintenance. John talked a little bit about their approach to that.
Callie, are you wanting us to try to answer some of these or talk about them? Or
You're welcome to chime in. I don't want to be the only one talking.
yeah, I see a couple interesting ones there. Someone asked, how does it work? How do the relationships between DNR, county, and local land managers work? So DNR ends up putting a lot of the funding. So we don't call the shots, but we do have a system in place that we don't go beyond to try to keep it consistent. But on the ground, what works for us is each county has has a county conservation board and a manager and staff people. And we rely primarily on those county conservation board or county conservation staff to maintain and manage that water trail. They are the voice of the local voice of that water trail. And then we continue to partner. And what happens is that through this network, you talked about the benefits of the network is, problems arise and oftentimes it's not just an isolated problem. The same problem might be happening somewhere else. Someone solves it within our network, and then we can pass that information on to other people to help them solve it when it comes up for them. So that networking is super important. And beneath the county conservation board directors or staff, unfortunately, in Iowa, we have multiple managers. So sometimes you have an access that's within a small community, a small town or city, and that's managed by other people, not the county and not the state. and we also have state wildlife areas. And then sometimes we have private accesses too. So it's a combination of those. And that sponsor works with them locally, and then I work with those sponsors. So I try to provide technical assistance and offer support. And luckily, our state has I would say, a well-funded um, program, and that is really significant. And I would lean on your local paddling groups, your local river advocates if you have them. If you don't have them, start one. And I don't know if you how ours started was a we register boats. All boats over 13 feet have to be registered, and that means we get Coast Guard money for those boats. Well, before our program started, paddlers were paying registration fees for their boats, but they weren't getting anything out of it. There was no program for rivers and paddlers. So the paddlers organized, like I said, Iowa Whitewater Coalition, Central Iowa Paddlers, other groups, and they lobbied on behalf of paddlers. And we got a position at the DNR, and then that grew from there.
Yeah.
So grassroots is really important. Connect with your local groups. And anyway, I'll stop talking. And I think Andrea is probably an example of that, right? I mean, you're a nonprofit, Andrea.
Yeah, we're a nonprofit, and we really serve. I cannot echo strongly enough what you said about the importance of the networking. Our Georgia Water Coalition is a hub of all of the river keepers and different stakeholders that are taking part in this, and they are addressing issues that are happening on the recreational use of the water trail. They are addressing issues that are happening with landowners. They're also addressing issues legislatively and from a regulatory perspective, and they're able to do it collectively with a unified voice. And that makes it super, super powerful. And it's, we're looking at a network of local trails that is perhaps different than what you're dealing with a centralized budget and staff and county conservation boards and all of those sorts of things. We don't have that kind of infrastructure that is so formalized. But by empowering the local advocates and building a network that supports each other, we have accomplished some of the same goals. And we certainly take advantage of the annual RTP funding that's coming from DNR as a result of the federal programs. We don't have as many applications to that program every year from the water trails. We tend to have 1 to 2 applications a year from water trails, but there are any number of folks that are trying to increase that. We being chief among them, obviously, trying to increase the number of applications. I think that part of the challenge we've run into is that those local groups have a really hard time meeting the application guidelines for what is essentially federal funding. And it's really difficult for them to establish the infrastructure to meet those guidelines and have that vision. So we do what we can to offer visioning and technical support and networking support, and to share successes and to augment challenges, try to address challenges. But I think, as everyone in this room, in this virtual room, knows, that's an ongoing, evolving world.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Thanks, Andrea. I'm just kind of scrolling through the chat a little bit. I see that there's a question here from about, once the trail is established, who's normally in charge of maintaining the river and keeping it navigable? I know if John kind of addressed that a little bit, but I know in Pennsylvania, one of the things we tell, and I don't know if this is referring to, kind of clearing obstructions either from storms or trees or things like that that might come down. We tell our managers that we don't really expect them to be responsible for for maintaining trail navigability. So every time there's a storm or every time a tree falls down, we don't expect them to go out there. In fact, unless they're like certified to do so, we encourage them not to put themselves in any harm's way. We do have one water trail manager whose trail is very narrow, and they have a fund set aside where they go out and they hire someone to clear all the trees that have fallen across the river, pre-season. That's a kind of a special case. We do ask our water trail managers to be responsible for maintaining access to the river, or to work with their municipalities to do so. So if there's a storm that completely like wipes out an access point, we don't expect them to like immediately reprint a printed map, of course, but to definitely get information out to their potential users and their constituents that says, hey, this access point's not usable right now. We're working with the landowner to address the situation. But we did create, I mentioned the mini grant program. We did have some really severe storms. Well, we all have, right? So in addition to everyone's having severe storms, but we had one that was like atrocious, and it did cause a lot of massive strainers. And we did come up with something that we're testing out where we're calling an urgent issues on a water trail grant, where if there is something that is preventing safe navigability of our trails, and we can address it kind of quickly with an infusion of money quickly, we have made that available to our managers. So that's a pot of money that doesn't take like a really long process. You just let us know there's an urgent issue and we can immediately release those funds. And then we talk about like match and stuff. So sorry, that's a long answer to that one question, but I think we'll move on for a moment because we do have some more slides to share. So thank you for that. And we'll try to get back to some questions. So, oh my Lord, what is happening here? I've lost my mouse. Let's see if I can get back to. I'm going to stop share and then try to reshare. Hi, everyone. All right, let's see if I can do this again. And there we go. Okay. Yeah, so I mentioned real quick, so I'm not really kind of sharing a success story here, although our other panelists are going to talk a little bit more about some successes that they've had that I think are going to also address some of the challenges. But as I mentioned, Pennsylvania is in this place where we are currently working without a plan, which is never a good idea. So we have prioritized a plan for 2024. And we're calling it a strategic action plan because it is really important to us that it has some strategic elements, but we're also thinking about it as not exactly a work plan, because I don't think a 5-year work plan is really reasonable, but definitely some key actions. And the sort of our objective here behind this water trail strategic action plan is to continue to make sure our #1 objective is to continue to make sure that a statewide program that's sort of administered by 3 statewide agencies is bringing added value to our individual water trail managers. We don't want to do something without their input. We don't want to create a program that's like, every time they hear from us, it's like more like an eye rolling. They want to kind of be excited because they know that when they hear from us, that they're, it's something that's going to add value to them as water trail managers. We definitely want to improve outcomes for our water trail users. So our constituents beyond just the managers, but the paddlers and the users of those trails. We want to make sure that we want to in some way manage a program that manage it so that Pennsylvania water trails, when you are on a designated water trail, that those are known assets for outdoor recreation and that you should be looking for them first when you're planning an excursion or looking for an outdoor recreational opportunity. And, we are funded by state agencies. And so we have to create a plan that also meets our state agency funder needs and priorities. So those are really the objectives of our plan. So we want to, our actions are really to look critically at managers' needs and program challenges and create ways to address them and not try to come up, with solutions to problems that might not exist. And one of the other things we're really trying to do, which I'm curious, maybe not today, but maybe in a future conversation, we haven't really done a very good job of creating any kind of like evaluation methodology that would measure or assess the impact of the statewide water trail program. So individual managers might have metrics that they're using to evaluate sort of the impact of their programs, of their paddling excursions, of their education and outreach, of their safety messaging. Fish and Boat definitely has metrics about, you know, is their safety messaging making an impact? But we don't have any way to really measure the impact of our statewide program. And, you know, when you're asking for money from an agency or from a funder, you know, they want metrics. And those I feel like are hard to come up with. But we really want to create that because we want to be able to like clearly identify and demonstrate that our program is having a positive impact on recreation statewide. And that's definitely something that we're going to be looking to do in our 5-year plan. So if anyone has resources to share on sort of measuring the impact of a statewide program, you know, in addition to just racking up number of miles of trails that have been designated, which is a good one for sure. But also to kind of show leveraging, like, right, we give this mini grant program. How is that grant program leveraging additional dollars? That's always a really important metric, but how else can we measure our impact? So yeah, and again, so the outcomes, like I said, are to have something like that really kind of demonstrates the impact of the program, and that we have, you know, really great guidance for directing my organization, the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, that kind of takes the lead on coordinating the program, really some clear and direct guidance for where should we be focusing our efforts over the next 5 years, again, to meet the needs of the managers, the funders, and the trail users. So that's kind of where we're at. And I'm going to turn it over sorry, who's next? Back over to Andrea, who I'm so excited to hear about this some more.
Yeah, so guys, what we ended up doing as we evolved our role from a historic role of declaring what is an established water trail, and as we found that to be less and less enforceable as the water trail police, as a nonprofit that doesn't own the land, we have moved into more of a promotion role, and we developed an app that includes our water trails statewide and a lot of information about them. And we launched it in March of 2022. If you don't mind, Tally, why don't we show this quick little video, and then I'll get back to say more about it.
Georgia River Adventures just got easier. Discover and explore Georgia's 30+ unique water trails by kayak, canoe, or paddleboard using the Georgia River Guide mobile app. Designed to be the modern adventurer's pocket guide, the Georgia River Guide app serves as the gateway to hundreds of miles of navigable waterways from Georgia's mountains to its coast. With a simple tap, easily locate safe public access points, water features, and more while planning your next trip. Need to rent a boat? Find local outfitters, boat rentals, and shuttle services using the app. Featuring information about river difficulty and potential hazards, the Georgia River Guide app helps keep paddlers safe on the water. Download the Georgia River Guide app to uncover the perfect section of river for tomorrow's adventure. Learn more at garivers.org.
So if we could go to the next slide, Tally.
Oh my gosh. Sorry. My Lord.
It's the dance break portion of our program.
All right. Stand up and move around.
So we're really excited, obviously, about being able to launch such a user-friendly tool for our target audience of recreationists, and really get folks who love our rivers and generate the next generation of advocates who love our rivers. We include information on 37 water trails covering more than 2,300 river miles, and it's curated information. It's information that's taken from the river keepers, from the guidebook authors, from the trusted sources of folks who really know and love these rivers. We include public access points and amenities, outfitters and shuttle services, level of difficulty, as well as specific river rapids and hazards. And the thing that I am most proud of, we have for every section of river a real-time link to the USGS gauge, and we give the number. We tell you what number you should be looking for on that gauge to know whether or not it's safe to paddle today. And so in addition to having already shown whether this is a class 1 difficulty river, a class 3 difficulty river, et cetera, and giving text information to explain what that means in terms of what you should expect to run into on this section of river, we're actually giving the real-time information to help people make those decisions, which at least in Georgia up until now has not existed in a readily available resource for particularly the entry-level paddlers on the class 1 rivers. We have so far had 8,700 downloads, and we feel pretty good about that. We feel like that's going to continue to grow. Have gotten to a point as that in all of the Facebook and community-based paddling groups, particularly for the new users, if somebody asked what's a good resource for them to use and how should they learn about what to do on this new river they haven't been on before, the users are starting to recommend our app to them. And it's not so much that we have to go in and say, hey, have you looked at the Georgia River Guide? The audience is actually starting to recommend it as a tool to their peers. So it's gotten tremendous support from our user base, from our state agencies, from our river keepers. I think our river keepers really feel like we are a solid partner in offering this tool to promote what they're doing. And we can go to the next slide. In terms of funding, over the years, most of this has been funded through GRN general support. As I said, this has been a passion project and just something that our board of directors has very much believed in. We have received some small grants from the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship Program and the RTP program that have been very, very, very important in the ongoing improvement of the data, maintenance and improvement of the data in the app. And it's been significantly augmented over the years through the donated hours of many, many, many college interns. This data did not get collected by itself. So having many college interns invest their time in the ongoing collection of this data was a critical part of the success. I would be remiss if I did not say we now have this app built. We have the infrastructure. We are a nonprofit. It is not readily available for me to offer it to you as a licensing platform to insert your own data, but we're only one step away from being able to do something like that. So if there are states or programs that would be interested in using this infrastructure to put your own branding and information into it, reach out to me, because we may be able to, over the course of the next 6 months or a year, come up with a way to do that would be more cost effective than you developing your own app if you're going to be trying to build something that accomplishes the same goal.
John, you want to go ahead? I think that's an amazing offer. I'll be reaching out. Go ahead.
You want me to go?
You're up, John.
Yep, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So Tally asked me to, talk either about a struggle or maybe a positive thing. And, we've made our share of mistakes, especially early on, but you almost have to make mistakes in order to improve. And we've been around quite a while, so we've made a number of mistakes. But one of the, I think, real positive things about, and that I'm proud of, for our program is we did adopt like a consistent look. And it's not just a consistent look, but we have a consistent approach to planning. We have consistent management and maintenance agreements. Next slide. So where that starts is with a mileage system, and we can't take credit for that. It was actually the contractor that we worked with came up with, it's similar to mile markers on a state or federal highway, and off and on ramps having numbers based on where they lie within that mile marker system. So we give all accesses a number based on their distance from the river's mouth. So, if the access is between, like, say, access number 33 and access 34, we always round up. So it becomes access 34. And uh, and that also ends up being, 34 miles from the mouth of the river. Uh, these numbers are on our signs, as you can see in this picture, um, and on our interpretive materials, on our maps, and incorporated into our interactive web map. And we will be working on an application too, a downloadable one, eventually. Next slide. Our access signage. So all of our signage is, we have a full standardized signage program. And you can see here, these are our access signs. We have access name sign, distance to next access lets people know how many miles it is to the next takeout. And then we have a water trail rule sign. We also have a sign that faces the river for those people who are on the river to know that there's an access in, because sometimes accesses aren't really obvious. So having a sign letting people know that access 62 is right around the corner. Now those are maintenance intensive because sometimes you have to put them in locations that are, next to the river that could get washed out, or brush, grows around. So it does create some maintenance issues. And then we have the public waterway signs. Let people know, where the private versus public land is. Next slide. And then we have our road signs. Now, we had to work with the DOT because on federal and state highways, obviously, we had to, find something that fit within the MUTCD manual. They did allow us to come up with our own sign, and you can see we have a kayaker person. But we have, again, there's that mile marker number, or access number. So it's basically your wayfinding signs. So all those look the same across the state on the roads, the road signs. Next slide. We also have bridge signs, and these are probably the most popular sign that we have for paddlers because, how nice it is to know where you're at, how far you need to go. And they also tend to be the most difficult to install or mount. So, but we continue to install these. Next slide. And of course, probably the most important sign is our warning, our hazard signage. And on the left here, you can see it. This is a whole series of signs. Lets people know way in advance that you've got a danger that's coming up. And then as you get closer to that danger, the signs actually turn red. They go from orange to red. And then they let you know where the last place you can get out is. It's not a formal access, but it's a place that's easiest to get out before the dam or whatever that hazard is. And one of the beautiful things that came out of our statewide plan was, we used to have a one size fits all sign, warning sign. Well, that doesn't make sense. When you have some rivers that are 300 feet wide, you have other rivers that are 60-foot wide. So now, the wider the river, the larger the sign. We have a formula that works out. And that's why you can see in that middle image how big some of our signs are. But what's the use of having a sign if it can't be seen from the river? On the far right there, we have these ad hoc signs. Again, that relationship with our partners, with our county conservation boards. When something happens, when you have a tree fall across the river, creating a river-wide blockage, and you've rated that river beginner friendly, that's a problem. So we work very quickly with our partners, our sponsors. We pay for that sign. They get it manufactured locally, and they get it up as quickly as possible. But that's, again, we won't do that on every stretch of the river because some stretches of the rivers are identified as challenge, or advanced skills required. But on beginner friendly rivers that we've rated beginner, we feel like we have an obligation to make sure to warn people of anything out of the ordinary. Next slide, please. And then all of our interpretive materials, we use the same Pantone color. We have a look and feel. So when people, open up a brochure, they know what to expect. and they can identify, oh, that's a water trail, that's related to the water trail in some way. We have brochures that are foldable. I think Minnesota started doing this first. Don't want to take credit for it, but it's foldable in a 6x4 format, so it fits in your pocket. And then when you unfold, it's 22x17. But because there's such little real estate that we'd like to put more information in, we also have a brochure that's formatted for 8.5x11. So when you download it in multiple pages, it's easy to read, right? Anyone tried to download a 22x17 document on a 8.5x11? Doesn't work out so well. So, and our paddlers, we get a lot of good feedback about that downloadable brochure. Next slide. And this is just examples. We have interpretive panels that we are working. We partner with our county conservation boards. We have cost sharing. We're sharing our money to to improve the resource and improve people's knowledge about the waterway. Next slide. And this is a booklet. We don't do this on every one of our water trails, but when we have a very rich context of history or what have you, we think it rises to that level. In this particular, 35-mile stretch of river, there are 4 historic districts. It was like the first internal river that people settled during westward events. And there's also a lot of Native American sites along the way and history. Next slide, and then I'll be done here. But just like consistency in materials and documents, consistency in approach in planning, we also have consistency on the ground when it comes to maintenance and management. It's a requirement for all of our water trails to be state designated. You have to have, a document that says who does what and when and what's expected. So we want people to know when they're out paddling a river, they should be able to know whether they're on a designated water trail or not. The whole magic wand approach is a bad approach. I mean, you can make your trails look really, nice on paper, right, or on a website, but it really makes a difference when you're out there using them and you can tell the difference between a non-water trail and a water trail. It's all about enhancing that experience and making it easier to access. And anyway, that's it. I think no more slides.
Yeah. So we only have a couple minutes left, and I know that we maybe set expectations kind of high here and had a lot of questions and interest. But I knew that we wouldn't be able to really address everything in an hour, right? This is complicated, and states are in all different places, and people have different challenges, some overlap. But I guess as I said, one of my third objectives for this and in talking with the RMS staff was, where could we go from here in this sort of state of state water trail programs? And so just super quick, if you guys would pop back over one more time to the Jamboard and maybe share some ideas of yours as to where we might go from here. And one of the things that I kind of talked with Risa and Becca and Angie about were, is there some kind of RMS supported group that could form moving forward, kind of use this word networking group to kind of chat a little, demonstrate a little bit that it would be about networking and sharing ideas and challenges, but maybe there would be some real working group tasks that we would advance together, maybe under a little bit of leadership from RMS, and whether it's updating a spreadsheet or a database of water trail programs across the country and how they're managed and what the benefits are and how they're branded, and maybe share signage design guidelines, share strategic plans, share unique funding sources, things like that. So If you have another moment or two before you have to hop off, I know it's getting late, at least on some of our work days. But if you have any thoughts about moving forward, is it another roundtable? Is it a separate group? Is it just a listserv? Anything that maybe RMS can help keep us engaged. And John, Risa, anybody can chime in here.
Yeah, I was wondering, that Jamboard, that's the first time I've ever used it or seen it, is really great because I think they're identifying, we could probably put a prioritized list based on the number of comments, maybe, and do another one of these based on the feedback that we're getting. I don't know. I'd be up for it.
Yeah, I certainly will. And Risa, I invite you to kind of chime in if you have any thoughts about a role that, where you think RMS could be, or limitations.
Well, from a mission standpoint, this would be a fabulous group to coordinate in whatever way is helpful, without laying on any kind of, burden or structure that's not helpful. Periodic meetings, more maybe periodic other meetups like this, other roundtables. Maybe we get into a specific topic, or we just do this again and take up where we left off. That the beauty of these roundtables is that they are for discussion and, for anybody and for shared learning. But water trail managers are essentially taking the job of what used to be state river managers. After 1968, after the Wild Scenic Rivers Act was created, we had maybe 40 state scenic river programs, and there are now like 3. So, and all that work kind of got dumped off the table and is being reconstituted by you guys, the folks who are here. So there's no recipe. I see Nancy Stewart on here. She's probably the beneficiary of the only legislated and still super strong statewide river water trails program in the state of Minnesota. But I don't know that there are any others quite like hers. John, you're probably second closest in terms of
Minnesota for sure has, I think they're the oldest program in the country as far as water trails. I think they maybe called them canoe trails back before water trails became a thing, but they also are one of the few that I understand hire out people to go through the canoe trails or the water trails and work on those log jams. They have the Minnesota Conservation Corps was born there, and that's kind of come into Iowa too. We now have the Minnesota Iowa Conservation Corps, and so it would be neat to see that spread, to other states. That idea that's very similar to AmeriCorps.
Yeah, I see
So I think
Daryl from Arkansas says, yes, do another one of these. Maybe
I'd love to hear from, no, I'd love to hear from other states. And there's lots of it's exciting in Pennsylvania. There is lots of great news right now. Funding for designing, improving, and constructing access points here in Pennsylvania. We actually have quite a bit of funding for that happening right now. Pennsylvania Environmental Council has a significant grant that it's actually undersubscribed. So now is a good time in Pennsylvania anyway to be improving access points. We have 2 of our state agencies and also a private funder have kind of come together to fund a mini grant program. So that's something we're pretty excited about. We haven't even touched on topics like, we were talking about universal access, and I know RMS has had some really interesting conversations about, inclusive trails and things like that. So we're definitely exploring a lot of ideas here. But thanks for this input. And it sounds like we at least at the very minimum have support for sort of another roundtable, maybe diving deeper into one of the topics.
Yeah, Tali and Risa, thank you so much for pulling all this together. I would just reiterate, Risa, I don't know if there's a way that if there's any of us could help write a letter and help you get a couple college interns that might support this next year. Sounds like we could go to town with this project.
I think there's plenty to do. All the questions are really, we could spend an hour on any 2 or 3 of these post-it notes. So we'll follow up because this is really important, for all of the states. And Angie, you want to take us out, and then we'll follow up, you guys. This will be recorded. We'll have recording.
Yeah, great segue, Risa. This is being recorded. We're going to post it on to our YouTube channel. Also, we'll email it out to everyone who's registered, so you'll get a link in your email. And then just a huge thank you to Tali and Andrea and John for sharing today, getting this conversation started. We do have a survey. It's a short survey. I'm going to put a link here in the chat, and we'd love to hear your thoughts about today's session. So please let us know. We'll take a look at that feedback. And then again, just thank you, and we're here to help support. So if there's anything else, feel free to reach out and pass back over.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Happy holidays and safe travels and trips, and thank you.
We should put a plug in for the RTCA program, River Trails Conservation Assistance Program, because they're out there willing to assist with some things. So they've been helpful for us. We've taken advantage of our RTCA program person here in Iowa, and I think it's nationwide if I remember. So
A number of those folks are here for sure. I've seen them, and
I have nothing but good to say about
cheerleading in
that
the
program.
chat.
Yes,
Maybe
I
they can
saw
be,
that.
maybe they can join us, to talk about the program sometime.
Yeah, we have an organization in one of our counties that's working on a greenway, and they were just singing the praises of RTCA. So yeah, excited to explore that.
They're
some more.
awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Guys, happy holidays, everyone.
Angie and Risa, is the chat saved for this in case there were questions or somebody we want to get back in touch with? So thanks.
Yep. Yeah, it'll save, and I can share that with the 3 of you.